All right, then let's get started. So for this practice, I'll just go through the first one just so that we get a brief review of sort of what's going on, because I think it's been a while for some of you. So I'm just going to reshare my screen. Okay, so just to quickly review, we want to make sure we're including the header, so IOStream, using namespace std, remembering C in and C out for our input and output, and then you got to be using semicolons. That tells the computer that like that line is over and it can move on to the next line. And sort of on that same length, you got to make sure that you are spelling your variables the same way. So if you use a capital letter when you're declaring your variable, you got to use a capital letter when you're using it later in your code. So I'll just show you guys this first one so we get a quick example. Here we are. Okay. So, let's see, what was the question? Write a program that takes a number from your user and multiplies it by 2. All right, so we have IOStream up here, and then we're using the namespace std. So did you guys use a double or an integer for this one?
Double.
Double. Okay, sounds good. Then we can use a double. And we could just name it num for number. And we have that semicolon. We're going to ask the user to enter a number. So cout, enter a number. And semicolon. And then we're going to get a user input. So we say cin, and that number from our user is that number. So we're going to say num. And now we want to multiply the number by 2, and we want to display it. So we're going to say cout num times 2. And let's run that. All right, enter a number. And since we have a double, then I guess I can use decimal places. And it displays that number, but multiplied by 2. And if you want to be fancy, you could add something like your number, or like double your number is, and then include this. All right, and then let's make sure we're using the chat just for class purposes today. All right, let's get back to the slides. And did anyone have any questions about the review? All right. If you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand using the feature in Zoom. So today, as I said earlier, we'll be learning conditionals, and then we'll be learning some more about strings. So you guys were introduced to strings a little bit last week, but that was pretty basic. So we'll learn a little bit more about the capabilities. So to begin, conditionals. So we use if statements in C++ and in coding in general, just because they allow you to specify different conditions. And you can become a lot more, you can give a lot more, like you can have a lot more criteria for your examples, and when you're just coding in general. So for example, let's say I had a bank account program, and that allowed you to deposit money or withdraw money or just check your balance. We want the program to allow the user to withdraw only if they have enough money to withdraw. Like if someone wants to withdraw $500 and their bank account only has $100, I don't want them to be able to take money out. So in that case, we need an if statement. And we might want to say something like, if the amount that the user wants to withdraw is less than the amount that the user has in the balance, then they can withdraw the money. So that's where if statements are really helpful. They allow us to specify exactly what we want to happen and when we want to happen. So this is sort of just the general format of an if statement. We say if, and then we have some condition. And I'll go over what a condition looks like, but it could be like if something is true, if something is false, if something is greater or less than or equal to. And then we have these curly braces. Now these are probably new to you guys, but the curly braces basically just enclose the block of code that we want the if statement to execute. So if this is true or false or greater or less, then do this code in between the curly braces. So for example, say we have the integer x, which is 20, y is 18. So we want to say something like, if x is greater than y, then we want you to output x is greater than y. And so there's a variety of operators. This one just shows you greater than, but there's also less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and then not equal to. So notice how the less than is just a single operator. It's just that like little arrow. But then less than or equal to, we have that plus an equal sign, sort of signifying that. What's really interesting is the equal to. So the equal to is not just one equal sign, but it is two equal signs. Because if you remember, when we're using one equal sign, if it's something like x equals 20, we're establishing that x is equal to 20. But in this case, we're not trying to establish a value or declare a value. We're just trying to compare two values. So we're trying to say, if 10 equals x, we're not saying 10 does equal x. So we'd use two equal signs. And this is really important to make sure you're using that or you will get an error. And then we also have not equal to. So we use exclamation mark and then an equal sign. So this is probably a lot to take in. So I do have a link to a Google Doc where I've sort of just compiled everything. I'll put that in the chat right now. Let me know if you can't view it. But basically you can use this as sort of a cheat sheet or a reference sheet. I've updated it with stuff up to the end of today's class. And basically you can just take a look at all these things and sort of have them in one place, then you don't have to go through the slide deck. So yeah, take a look at that if you want a refresher on these. So now I'll give you guys an example to try. Say we have a user and they want to withdraw money from their own bank account. If the withdraw amount is greater than the balance amount, then I want you to tell the user that they're unable to withdraw, because in that case, they don't have enough money to take money out. So you can try things with maybe a withdraw number of 500 and the balance of 300, then also try with a withdraw number lower than your balance number. See if there is an output yet. So make sure you're using that website. And I think a few people joined, so I'll just put that in the chat one more time. For our online compiler. And so I want you to start by declaring your variables. Since we're dealing with money, it'd be a good idea to use doubles so that they can maybe withdraw 50 cents if they wanted to. So yeah, begin by declaring your variables. I'd maybe name it balance and withdraw just so you can keep that straight. And why don't you guys start, and I'll start it in a minute so you can sort of watch my screen and make sure you're getting it right. All right, so hopefully by now you've declared your variables, whatever you've called them. And the next step would probably be to figure out your if statement. So just a reminder, it looked like if, and then you have some condition. So do you want your balance to be greater or your balance to be less than the withdraw amount? And then some block of code. So what do we want it to say? Something like if the withdraw amount is greater, we want them to say that they're unable to withdraw. All right, so can someone get me started? What did you guys put for the condition? If did you do if withdraw is equal to balance? All right, so let's see. If the withdraw amount is greater than the balance amount, then we want to tell the user that they're unable to withdraw. All right, so someone is saying so if balance is less than withdraw. That looks right. So balance is less than withdraw. We got to include these curly braces. The balance is less than withdraw. We want to tell the user you are unable to withdraw. Semicolon. All right. So what should we set this first value to be? We want withdraw our balance to be 300. And we can try withdraw to be 500. So what do we expect the program to say if our balance is 300 and our withdraw amount is 500?
You are unable to withdraw.
Yep, so let's try that. Perfect. All right, so what if I changed the withdraw amount to be $40 instead of 500? Will we see an output?
No.
No, you're right. You just get nothing, which is interesting and quite unfortunate. We still, since the withdraw amount is less than the balance amount, we want our user to actually be able to take from their bank account now. So that we use else statements. Else statements are basically an addition to our if statements. Oh, and someone asked to send the code into the chat. Of course I can do that. All right. So that leads us to our else statements. We have our if statement, where we use a condition, and then we have it execute a block of code if the condition is true. But if the condition is not true, we still want the code to continue. And so then we can use something called the else statement. So as you can see, the else statement is essentially the same as the if statement, but instead of including a condition, we just continue on with the curly braces. So we just exclude the curly braces. And you can't just use the else statement on your own. You do have to use it with an if statement. So just keep that in mind. So now we're going to keep what code you had before, and we're going to add an else statement so that your user can withdraw if their balance is high enough. So in this else statement, first I want you to calculate the new balance and then output that new balance. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. We did our if statement, and it says that if the withdraw amount is too high, then it's going to say you cannot withdraw. However, if that's not the case, if the withdraw amount is less than the balance, then I want them to be able to withdraw. And so if they're taking money out, then their balance is going to go down. Say they had $200 in their balance and they want to withdraw 50, then I want the balance to change to 150, right? 200 minus 50. So in the else statement, what I want you to do is calculate the new balance. And then I want you to output the new balance. So what do you think about that? How could we calculate the balance with our withdraw and our balance amount? All right, then, does anyone have any ideas? Ooh, this is weird.
We could do balance minus withdraw.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we have you are unable to withdraw. So now we're going to add our else statements, and there's no condition, just the curly braces. And so our balance is going to be our previous balance minus the withdraw amount, and then a semicolon. I want to output that, so I'm just going to say cout. Something like your new balance is, and then balance. All right, so what do you guys expect our new balance to be if we're using 340? Maybe 260? Let's see.
How do you make it so then you can like separate 2C out?
The diagonal edge of the triangle, right triangle.
Sorry, 1 second. Could you repeat your question?
How do you like separate 2C out? Isn't like a period / period thing?
Yeah, so in this case, we have a triangle prism which base looks like this, right?
Did you say separate what?
It's 10,
Mm-hmm.
24, and 26.
Like separate
And we know its surface
2C
area
out
is
because
540.
I have
So what's the height?
2C out.
Oh yeah, 2C outs. Yeah, so there's two different ways you can do that. If you have two different strings, and we'll talk about this, if you have two different strings, you can just use a plus sign. But since we don't have two different strings, you got to use these two arrows. So if you see how I did it here, does that answer your question?
No.
Oh, all right, then what do you mean, like separating two C outs?
Yeah, I have C out successfully withdrew money, and then below that I have C out. You have blank money left, but they just smushed together.
And you're pressing enter? Oh, I see what you mean. You want a new line, right?
One answer,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll do that right here. I'm gonna do the two more arrows, and I'm gonna do the like the quotation marks, and then you do a backslash, and then the letter N, and then we could say like see out. Thanks for
maybe 5 is right.
shopping.
I'm sorry.
And then hopefully they won't
That's right.
switch together.
Because it's similar to triangles.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So this backslash and then N. And I'll put this in the chat if anyone wants to see it. All right, are there any other questions about this? If not, then we'll move on. We have a couple other examples. First, I'll just show you the, oh yikes, my tabs are not, okay. First, I'll show you how to do else if. So this was the else statement. We have if, condition, then do this. Else, do this stuff. But let's say you want even more conditions to be added. Then you can do something called the else if statement. So if this condition, do this. If this condition is true though, do this instead. Otherwise, do this. So we're just adding more and more layers. And you can add as many else if statements as you want. So it's a really nice way to just keep splitting things up if you want to add some more specifications for your code. So I've got a couple examples, and depending on how fast you work, you can try one or try both. I'd recommend starting with the first one, and I'll do the first one as an example in a couple minutes. But just give these a try, and you can practice your if statement. I think both of these will need to use the if statement, the else if, and the else statement. Or you could just use if, else if, and then else if. I think that's something that I didn't really clarify earlier. You don't have to use the else statement. You could just use if, condition, and then continue on with your code. Or you could use if, and then else if, and then not use the else statement. That's totally up to you. So yeah, give these a try. I'd recommend starting with the first one. And for this first one, note that 0 isn't positive or negative, so you might need to use more than just if and else. All right, hopefully you guys have made some progress on that first one. I'll start doing it on my computer so you can follow along if you're a little stuck, but otherwise, keep working on that second one. If you finish with the first one, then go ahead to the second one, and I'll just start working on that first one right now. All right, so for that first one, how did you guys do it? Did you use one if statement and then two else statements? Did you use an if and an else if and then an else? Did you just forget about 0 and only do positive and negative? How did you do it? All right, looks like Lawrence said 0 is neither positive or negative. Good choice. And let's see what my program will say if we run 0. Your number is 0. Wonderful. And if we try 88, it's positive. Awesome. I can put this in the chat, but does anyone have any questions about this one? And did anyone do that second one? If you have any questions or if you want to share anything, did it go well?
Or chapter 2? Because we're
I
chapter 2
almost did
next
it,
class.
but how do you make it so
What is the homework,
you
though?
can
Yeah,
tell
it'll
if
be
the
posted in
cost
class.
is in between 20 and 50?
That's a great question. And we can go over that right now, actually. So I will show you that right here. Let's just say let's say num1 is cost. All right, so if the cost, so the first one we're looking at is if it's less than 20. Then the next one, else if num1 is less than 20. And we want to say if it's less than 20, oh wait, sorry, not less than 20, greater than 20. And less than 50, right? That's how we could say it's between 20 and 50. So to do that, I'll show you it right here because I think I forgot to include this. I included it on the cheat sheet, but I think I forgot to include it on the slides. So if we wanted to say and, if we wanted to talk about two different types of logical operators, we basically just use the and sign like in English, but we do it twice. And then if we want to say or, we want to talk about something or something else, we use the vertical bar. Now, this is not the letter L. It's also not an uppercase I. It's like called a vertical bar. If you're on an iPad, it might just be easier to copy paste. I don't know. But make sure you're using the vertical bar. And for both of these, just like we were using with the equal sign, we're doing it 2 times. So I'll show you that right here on the right side of my screen. So if the number is less than, then we want to give it a $10 shipping fee. If the number is greater than 20 or, oh, sorry, not or, greater than 20 and the number is less than 50, right? That way it's between 20 and 50. Then whatever you had put here would work. Does that make sense, Aaron?
Yes.
Brianna sent me a funny joke. Is it vertical line or I or L or 1? I guess we'll never know. But yeah, and I included this on the cheat sheet. I think it's somewhere near the bottom. You'll see it. But I'll make sure to add that to the slides when I post it on the Google Classroom. So thank you for the reminder. Yeah. All right, otherwise, was that second one, did that work for anyone? All right, then we can move on. Oh, then Caitlin, I think you did it right, because I think we want it to have no shipping for 50 or over. So nice job. I see. All right. So now we're moving on to strings. So we talked a little bit about strings last week, and as you know, strings are just words. But now we'll be talking a little bit more about strings, because in like the main library of C++, what you can do with strings is quite limited, which is why we need to include a new header. We'll call this hashtag include string. And this gives you access to the entire string library, essentially. So let's get started. One thing, this is a very big word, concatenation. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but you guys have been doing it. Essentially, we just use the plus operator to connect strings. This one, though, I've been a little bit hesitant about just because it's easy to confuse with other things. As I showed you before, if we want to connect like a string and a word, we have to use the 2 arrows. But if you want to connect just strings, you can use a plus sign. So you can keep that in mind. That might make it a little bit easier, but you got to remember you can only use the plus sign with strings when you're connecting them. If you're connecting a string and a word, or a string and a number, you have to use the arrows, or like a string and a variable. Or wait, no, just like a number variable in a string. So as you can see, if we had like John as that first variable and Doe as that second one for first name and last name, it would output both together because the plus sign just connects them. So another very important thing, now this stuff we don't need the string library for, which is something to note. So Brianna asks a good question. Can you use that plus sign to concatenate integers, floats, and doubles? So yes, because, and we can try that here. I can do that right here. I believe you can. I'm used to just using the arrow, so this is actually new to me as I was like reading this preparation. But let's say we wanted to see out, num1 was like 0. And then int num2 equals 1. See out num1 plus num2. Yeah, I believe this will just give us 1. Yep. So you can use that for variables, but it looks like they have to be the same data type, because then as soon as I use something like string hi, and then I try and do that, I don't think it'll work. Yep, because they're not the same data type. So strings are just a little bit funky like that. All right, so now this, to note, you don't really need that string library for it. You just need like the basic C++, so you don't need to include that header. However, this is a new function that's pretty important and easy to forget. This is called Getline. So Getline we use instead of cin for strings. I think you probably used cin last week, and if you tried to enter your last name last week when we were trying to just enter words and make it say hi and your name, you might have gotten an error. And that's because cin cannot get anything with a space. So it'll stop after that first word, or it will just give you an error. So that's why you use Getline if you want to get more than just one word. And I'll show you that right now. To use Getline, we'll just go Getline and then cin, parentheses, cin, comma, and then whatever variable you've named your string. So in this case, I'll just say hello. You can just say hello world. And then if I want to cin, oh no, we got a cin. So let's do this. And then say I want to cin something from my user. I'll show you right now. It'll fail if I do multiple words. Oh, oops, we gotta see out as well. So if I do something like hello world, it'll only say hello because it stops at that space, which is why we gotta use Getline instead. So we can go Getline, parentheses, cin, comma, and then hi, because hi is the variable we'll use. And then if I say hello world, it'll output hello world back to me. There can't be a space. There can be a space if you're talking about between the commas. Oh, between the Getline function? Yes. I think, there we go. Thank you for that correction, Jennifer. And I'll put that in the chat. Okay, so that's the Getline function. That's pretty important when you want to get more than just one word from your user. Another really important one is called length. This is just kind of fun to use. You can, so say you have like the alphabet, we want to get the length of that string. You'd say, since we named the string variable text or txt, then you're just going to go txt dot length and then the two parentheses. So this dot length is pretty new to you guys, and this is part of that object-oriented programming. We're basically like calling the object. We're like calling the function with the dot. And I think it's a little bit confusing to understand. So I won't get too much into that object-oriented programming part of it, but as you do get more into C++ or Java, I think that's pretty important. So yeah, we basically use the dot length. Yeah, another alternative to length is just to do text dot size. It doesn't matter which one you use. I just like length because it makes more sense to my brain. But you could use dot length or you could use dot size. All right, so another really cool thing with strings you can do is indexing. So in C++, when we are counting things, we start at 0. So in indexing, we'd want to, like, indexing means we're trying to figure out what letter is in what spot of this, if that makes any sense. Sorry, that was so confusing. So basically, say we wanted to figure out what is the third letter of this word. We could do something called indexing. So we'd say a string name, in this case it's called my string, and you just do 2 brackets, and then you put a number in there. And that number tells you the position of a letter that you're looking for. So say they put 0 in this example. So 0, interestingly, is the first number. It's really important to remember or you'll be messing up a lot. So if we put 0, then we're getting H, the first character. So if we have 1, then we're going to get E. Site for programming. So basically we're using this indexing to figure out different letters in different positions. So that first one is 0, So it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Note that goes to 4, not 5, even though it has 5 letters. All right, and another really cool thing we can do with strings is called substring. So we could use something like the string name, whatever variable we call it, dot substr, or substring. And then you just indicate the position of the first character and then the length of the phrase. So I could do something like my string dot substring, and then like 2, 3, and it would go LLO. So you can just pick out different parts of the string if you wanted to. So these are just some of the more basic ones, and I'll put a few more of the string functions on that cheat sheet if you just want to check them out yourself. But these are pretty cool just to try different things. Yeah. All right, so we can try this out with string functions. Maybe try and find the length of the word elephant. So if you remember to find the length, you do the string name, dot length, and then 2 parentheses, or dot size and 2 parentheses. So try and figure that out, and then I'll put a couple of more on here. I'm also putting that Google Doc, that like that cheat sheet reference guide, so that you can look at that. Because I don't think I'd want to switch the slides right now. So if you want to recap of those string functions, you can look at that. And make sure you're using the string library. So hashtag include string. All right, hopefully you got that the word length was 8. You can also, if you wanted to, maybe make that so that the user can put their own word in. But I'll also do that next part. So get the character in the 5th spot of the word elephant. So for this, we're just going to use the indexing, just use brackets, and then find the positioning. Now, if you want the 5th letter, I guess I should have been more clear about that. Yeah, so 5th spot. So we want the 5th letter of elephant. So what number did you guys put for your indexing?
Four.
4. Nice. Yep. And uh-oh, they're together. So to fix that, you can just go \n. All right, awesome. So it looks like we still have a few more minutes, so I'm just going to put a couple examples or practice problems on the board, and you guys can work through them and let me know if you have any questions. I'll start with just some if statement ones, and then I'll put some if statement with strings. And let me know in the chat if you have any questions. If you're into math, maybe try that third one. All right, looks like we just have a couple more minutes. So as soon as you finish whatever problem you were trying, try the fourth one. I think that'd be a nice way to practice your strings, but then also your if statements. And I'll start it in just a couple minutes. All right, looks like we're running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll put the answer to that last one on the Google Classroom so that you guys can see it. Because I think that's a pretty good, like, comprehensive practice of everything. And then I'll also put some other practice problems on Google Classroom this week, and I'll put the slides up there. So if you want to do any practice, you can. You don't have to, but I'd encourage you to, just so that you're ready for next week. Next week, we'll review our if statements, and then we'll go on to loops, which will be very fun. So yeah, thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.